welcome to this this forum, if you like, hosted by GSA in support of NTEU and Rescom's training. My name is Ntu Representative. I'm the GM for Student Engagement at GSA, I'll throw it over to our illustrious president to kick us off, and we'll do a bit of introductions, and then we'll get started around the conversation. Jeremy?
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Davida, and hello and welcome everyone again. Before we continue, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional custodians of the land where GSA ordinarily operates on the Parkville campus. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and extend this respect to any First Nations people with us here today. To this day, sovereignty has never been ceded, and this land always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So GSA is here today to facilitate the discussion on changes to some of the graduate research or training options at the University of Melbourne. We are very happy to welcome our guests from the NTEU, the National Tertiary Education Union, and the Rescom training team as well. If you aren't entirely familiar with what we do here at GSA, we are the peak representative body for all postgraduate students at the University of Melbourne. And of course, that really importantly includes postgrad researchers, HCR students here at the university as well. So our role is always to see if there is going to be any impact on the graduate student experience or your education or your research. We're here to make sure that we are kind of holding the university accountable to that, informing students on the issues that we need to advocate on and to connect GSA with stakeholders to seek better outcomes. So that's kind of what's coming up today. And for now, I'm going to hand over to our Education and Research Officer from GSA, Mia Zentari.
Thanks, Jeremy. So I'm Mia. I'm in the final year of my Masters of Public Health, which I'm really enjoying. And as Jeremy said, I'm the elected Education and Research Officer. So this position is really concerned with anything happening at the university that is impacting the academic life of students. So whether you are a research student or a coursework grad student, any issues that you have around an academic nature, always feel free to send through an email. The email address is education@unimelb.edu.au. And to basically get into the forum now, I'll hand back to Davida. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeremy and Mia. And as I mentioned before, this is the forum to have this discussion around some of the changes that are proposed that will definitely affect grad research support at UniMelb. So in the room, just as an introduction, we have Pablo Franco from the Rescom's training team. So Pablo is a PhD candidate at the Faculty of Business and Economics. He's worked as digital tools trainer and community coordinator for over 3 years now at university. With Pablo, we have Alex Sherman. So Alex is a research community coordinator for InVivo. So if you're a grad researcher, you know that very well. And Omeko at the Research Computing Services. He's just about to start his PhD in populism and conspiracy theories after completing his master's last year. Wow. So he has been a project officer at Digital Studio and has worked as a research assistant in numerous places around the uni for a few years now. So that's the Rescom's training team. And also with us from NTU, we have Katie Wood. So Katie has worked at the University of Melbourne Archives for over 10 years now, and for most of that time has been a union delegate in the library, a member of the Union Branch Committee, and our national councillor. So welcome to Katie. And I know we have Annette also here supporting Katie as an NTU officer there. So yeah, on behalf of GSA, we'd like to a warm welcome to our experts in the room. And as I mentioned earlier, we're here to facilitate a discussion around the changes proposed by the university on Rescom's training. Now, a bit of admin here. We have the Q&A section of this forum open. You can ask questions anonymously if you'd like, or put your name to it. It's totally up to you. The chat function has been disabled only so that we can funnel all the conversations into Q&A and hopefully get through all those questions while we have these guys in the room. So I guess what I want to start with, sorry, I should mention this is a recorded session, and we will be sending this out through our channels after the session. So at least if you wanted to listen to it again, or you have some colleagues that wanted to sort of access this conversation, it will be all on our channels, and we'll make sure it goes through NTEU and Rescom's training, and also GSA channels for reference. So yeah, before we get, I guess, into the nitty gritty, I wanted to sort of reach out to Katie in the room and maybe ask a bit of the context, or maybe just paint a picture of us about essentially why we're here and where NTEU has got involved.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tavita. First of all, before I start, I think I'll just say that I'm an elected representative with the NTEU. So I'm employed by the university, not by the union. So what I say about what the university is doing and has done are my own words and thoughts as a union representative. And I think that the broader context of what's happening with Rescom is really important, because often these things are sort of presented as though the managers have done a very rigorous and thorough investigation of the services and have decided to abolish such services on the basis of that. Whereas I think it's much clearer when you have a look at the broader context that these decisions are nothing more than short-term, irrational and illusory cost-cutting decisions. And to bring it all the way out, you know, anyone who's had has even glanced at the higher education sector in Australia over the last few decades knows about the corporatisation and the neoliberalisation of higher education. That's because of significant cuts to government funding, and it's meant both, you know, widespread job cuts, just ongoing job cuts, and also casualisation. And Melbourne University, even though it's one of the wealthiest universities in the country, and that's both in terms of its revenue and in its asset, it has something like a staggering $8 billion in assets, has also been one of the worst at cutting staff and casualisation. So an estimate came out last year that said that 70% of university staff are on casual contracts. And I think it's pretty outrageous at such a wealthy institution that that's the case. And the Rescom team are an example of that. You would have thought that digital research training would be an ongoing and essential service for the university, and yet the whole team are on casual contracts, except for the manager. And I think the planned abolition of the team gives an indication of why casualisation is useful to the university, because they can just turn around one day and say, we're going to abolish this team, and they don't need to worry about paying redundancy payouts, which they have to do for ongoing and fixed term staff, and some of the other protections that other staff have in the enterprise agreement. So casualisation makes cost cutting cost effective for the university, whereas otherwise sometimes it wouldn't be on a short-term basis. So that's where this particular decision kind of fits in on that broader level. But then of course at Melbourne Uni there's also been the context of, you know, 5 years ago we had the Business Improvement Program, the so-called BIP, which saw 540, 1 in 10 non-academic staff just sacked in one go. Like what happened was that areas like the library where I was were given 2 weeks notice to try and get rid of 1 in 9 jobs and figure out how they were going to do that under the guise of improved processes. But it really was just an out-and-out staffing cut. And because it was done in such a hurried way, and because the work was still there, it meant that the outcome of that was increased admin role work for academics. The efficiency around university services was just gone, and years and years of just trying to get over this ridiculous decision. And because the work was still there, but the staff had been cut, we then saw after BIP, a number of years later, professional staffing levels started to go up again. And this university, since BIP, has always said that they want to benchmark the number of professional staff that they have at the university against other Go8 universities. And they say that we're one of the worst, by which they mean that we're one of the highest employers of professional staff. So it depends on which way you look at it. And that's the context that we have now, when the university used the pandemic as an excuse to try and cut jobs. And now they're calling it a professional services review, and the Vice-Chancellor bandied around the figure of 450 job cuts last year, a number of times. 200 of those have gone through voluntary redundancies, but I think it's pretty obvious that they want to continue to cut staff. And the business services area, which is one of the largest professional staff areas in the university, is obviously one of the key targets for those staffing cuts. And that's where Rescom fits in that kind of broader picture. I'll leave it there, otherwise there's more to say about that. But I think in particular the desire of the university to outsource essential services and to shift the cost of payment onto staff and students. But I think that'll become a bit more obvious when we follow through with this conversation. So I'll leave it there.
Great. Thanks, Katie. And I guess it's just really important, to totally understand, the bigger picture of how we actually funnel down to, I mean, in this case, I'm sure there's a few other cases that it has direct impact on the support services for our grad students, grad researchers. So I might just flip it into the Rescom's training group here, and maybe for those who are on the call that just want to get an overview of what Rescom's training is, for those who are not grad researchers in the space, and maybe just give us an overview there, and then we'll sort of slowly talk about the changes that have been proposed and how that generally affects our students. Alex?
Yeah, wonderful. I'm happy to give an overview of Research Computing Services Training and Community Function, which is where we sit. Essentially, we're within business services. To put it hierarchically, you've got business services, then Research Computing Services, and then us as the training and community function. And essentially what we offer is free digital research tools, training, and community to anyone at the university who wants to come along. It is entirely free to learn how to use NVivo, entirely free to learn how to use R for your research, or Python, or MATLAB, or all of the other tools that we teach. Alongside that, that's the training function. The community function is equally as important because we have clearly noticed that when you're working and liaising with graduate researchers, no one person is ever going to be able to answer every question that's provided to them, particularly as your research gets increasingly more complex. And so the other part of our role is to be able to connect researchers with other like-minded researchers to engage in that kind of collective problem-solving ability and capacity there. On top of that, working in Research Computing Services, a lot of our role is also to make sure that researchers are using the tools and the functions and the services that the university pays hundreds of thousands of dollars for. The university has a massive NVivo license. Everyone can access a copy of it, but that's useless if no one knows how to use it. Likewise for high performance computing, and likewise for cloud computing and storage and all of those things as well. So that's another key function is onboarding researchers onto those increasing levels of complexity and performance. So broadly, that's what we do. And the change, briefly put, for what our department is facing is a proposed disestablishment, whereby every one of us will lose our jobs, and it will be, I suppose, replaced with what has been kind of put around as a sort of administrative role, an incredibly demanding role. And this speaks to what Katie was talking about before, about how the work that's left is still there and someone has to do it. The role that's being put forward to replace us is this incredibly demanding role where someone is going to be responsible for creating technical documentation for every single research tool at the university, which seems an impossible task, but nonetheless, that's what they think a workable alternative is. And so without us, you'd lose the ability to do free research training, you'd lose the facilitated communities that we provide, and the idea was that that would be outsourced towards the faculties. someone probably should have told the faculties that, because they are just as surprised as we are that that's going to be their responsibility moving forward. So briefly put, that's where we are, and that's the kind of situation that we're in.
Great. Thanks, Alex. I think, I mean, I've been with GSA a little while now, and these tools that are meant to make a grad researcher's studies easier, or allow them to generate the data or analyze the data in a way that will help them complete their studies, I think is really important. Especially, I mean, there's a multitude of disciplines that come out of graduate researching, but the software and the technology is there to support them to sort of get through it. And I think the training is huge. I mean, in vivo, couldn't spell in vivo the other day, but now it's just, you know, that is, even the actual software alone is complex enough, but the way it supports grad researchers to utilize that software is incredible. So, and you're right, it's not a cheap bit of kit. I think a while back we used to have trainers come in. It was really expensive, and students had to pay for that service to be able to access that software. So yeah, it is a shame, and I think this conversation is quite a healthy conversation to have, especially with those in the room. And a couple of comments came through, and I'm sorry we can't use the chat for any memes at the moment, but and thank you for the nice words there for what Katie was addressing earlier. But I think the next step for me in this is you talked broadly around what it means. I mean, is there any way you can talk about where we're at? I guess you know, we talked about the changes that are coming through, and we talk about, I mean, the top level stuff that is going to be affected by this change. I mean, where are we at in this process? I think is where should I talk to you? Can I talk to you, Katie, or Alex, or Pablo, around in terms of this consultation period? Where are we at?
So if I can speak to that. So the consultation, there was a consultation period in which they were asking for feedback on the proposal. That finished last Friday. So that part of the process is over. We did generate an open letter in which we gathered testimonials and signature from graduate students, among other researchers, and how this service has helped them, or how they think this service adds value to the university and the research done in the university. And actually we got almost 1,000 signatures and almost 600 testimonies. Among the signatures, 500 were graduate researchers from the university. So I think that's a huge and loud and clear message saying from the graduate community saying, this is a valuable service. And so thank you to all of the graduate students that helped us and signed the open letter. In terms of what we are at now, we are in between the end of the consultation and them making a decision. So at that point, the best thing we can ask you to do is, and we'll post a link as well in a bit with all the descriptions of the steps that you can take, is talk to the people that are in charge. Talk to the heads of school, talk to deans. So if there's someone that you know that is senior leadership and that you think that might have, that might be on your side, or even if you think it's not might be on your side, you can just put on your graduate researcher hat and say, I think this is valuable for the university, and I think you should appeal for this service in my name. So I think that's how you can help at the moment. And as I said, I will put in a link. We've put in like a step-by-step of what you can do and who you can contact if you're eager to help us out.
Fantastic, Pablo. And just to reiterate on that open letter, as you registered, you would have seen the link to the open letter, and I'm happy to share the link towards the end of this conversation, so at least you can see what it said and how and why there was such a strong feedback on that open letter. I guess so. I guess the question is now around what's the alternative if we go through this model of consultation periods and Rescom's training is disbanded. What's the alternative for grad research? Because grad research at the end of the day is still going to be in this space. And so I guess for those on the call, probably say, okay, so what next then? So worst case scenario, what are they talking about?
Yeah, so there's already training at the university that you have to pay for. The Statistical Consulting Centre, I believe, runs paid training. that's the future without free training at the university. And it's clear that's the direction that they're moving away from. You're looking at paying, I think we've done some rough estimates. It depends on the tool, but you're looking at minimum hundreds of dollars to pay for training, and at maximum even thousands of dollars. One of the comments that we did receive during a few meetings through the consultation process was, well, it's really easy for researchers to just access free training online. And I guess the point to that would be, if it was that easy, more researchers would be doing it, and we wouldn't have thousands of researchers coming to us for help and for consultation for the past however many years we've been in operation. We've had some 3,358 attendees come through our virtual doors in 2020. And so, you know, the argument that online learning is at such a point that graduate researchers are just going to be able to pick up R and Python and NVivo and have all of their questions answered and everything like that, that idea is fundamentally flawed and really masks the reality that this work that we're doing is essential for researchers. It should be the role of a university to support its graduate researchers, and currently these claims that you're able to do it externally for free are wrong, and the consequence of that is that you're going to end up having to pay hundreds to thousands of dollars to get the same equivalent kind of training that we're offering currently, without the added benefit of all of the community functions that we provide as well.
Yeah, look, you say, yeah, obviously it's not a pretty picture, obviously, and we've just got a comment through there on the Q&As, you know. It's $1,100 for an intro to our course, and that was advertised yesterday. So the differences are quite considerable in terms of the impact it will have on our grad researchers, you know, financially, as well as also navigating through their studies. So, and not to mention, you know, our friends at Rescom's training, you know, being out of work. And some who are in their PhD or just about to embark on a PhD, it's important to, you know, to have some supplement there to carry you through that life at university. I guess another question I wanted to ask, you know, what I mean, we talked about this, you know, you talked about the costs of training, the loss of, well, I mean, essentially, you talked about these other areas that are potentially going to provide the service for paid for service. I mean, what's the knock-on effect for the team? I mean, I guess at the end of the day, we're talking about humans in the team now. So we've got two of you here. I'm sure there's more than two of you in the team. I just want to maybe understand what that knock-on effect is for those people.
Yeah, well, at this stage, the proposed establishment basically means that everyone in the team is gonna be made redundant. I think at this stage, some people have left the team since the consultation started, but I think we're around 10 people. And 9 of them basically are casual workers. Only 1 person is permanent. Basically, all of those jobs disappear, and they are replaced by one single full-time job that, as Alex was saying, will take care of making all the online training material that is not training directly, but just online material. So there is no proposal of how we can actually pass the team to somewhere else, or where the team could find a better place to not have to go through this redundancy process. I do want to point out that the reasoning behind this proposal is unclear. So from the beginning, this has been unclear. They've referred to the financial position of the university, and they've also referred to a lack of demand by the general research community, which through the open letter, we've clearly undermined that argument. But still not clear why they're doing this. And besides what Katie said, and it is just opens the question then, the main core of what they were saying and they were doing is, we're gonna focus business services on what we are meant to do, and that is not training. So the fact is that they did not try to locate us somewhere else, even though they know the service is valuable, or we've shown that the service is valuable. We do hope that we are allocated somewhere, even if it's not within business services. And we do hope that the solution is not one that's faculty-based, because we also provide a lot of community support, which is quite interdisciplinary. So we promote and empower collaboration between people that just can be together based on the digital tool they use and not basically on the discipline, which is great for creating interdisciplinary research. And that would go away if they have to start creating faculty-specific solutions. So in that sense, the short answer is there's no plan, but redundancy for all of us. And there has been some discussions on possible proposals, which have not been disclosed yet, on reallocation or, but it's still very shady, and we do not have any information on what exactly a potential reallocation could look like.
Great, thanks, Pablo, and thanks for making it clear. There's definitely people involved here, and I think part of that people discussion is the community that is built on was part of Rescom's training. And I think from my experience of when I was lucky enough to meet the team in person in Doug Mac early 2019, and GSA has worked with Rescoms for many years, and trying to collaborate and ensure that our grad researchers have that access and they know what's going on. I know that you're extremely busy, so there was nothing, it wasn't like it was one of those tumbleweed moments where it was like, okay, this is the training center. It was always busy, which is a testament to the work you guys did. But also, I guess, that community feel around the people that are training are usually students themselves, and also build that community around, I guess, a knowledge base and also an easy access peer-to-peer kind of setup. And I think that also is probably one of the downfalls of pulling apart something like this, because it does take a little while to build that together, to become that safe space for people to ask those silly questions, or fall over a couple of times and have a peer talk to them and say, no, actually that's all right, I did that when I first started this software, or it's easy mistake to make, or actually have you looked at doing it this way, because it might bring out your data in a different way that'll make it easier for you to analyze. And I think that's part of this change actually brings that change to that community feel. And you made a good point before, Pablo, around trying to take it away from faculties. And I think it's inherent of universities. I think we can probably all agree on that. The faculties are definitely in charge of their own zones, and sometimes for the best and sometimes for the detriment to students and that collaborative feel. And GSA is absolutely, especially with our new constitution change, it shows that we'll have faculty members in each faculty. And so therefore we're trying to connect the faculties across each other, but also let students know what's happening in their spaces. And so, obviously we can see the Q&As. Hopefully you can all see the Q&As that are coming through from the guys in the room. And I think I want to take this opportunity to, if there's any questions you'd like to ask the guys in the room, be it in the Rescom's training area, or be it from an NTEU perspective, we've definitely got them here to address or have a better discussion or closer discussion on some of the things that are coming through. I've got a question that's come through here. How do these changes impact the chances of future ARDC funding applications? Now, I don't have the answer there. Can I put it to anyone in the room? Does anyone have that answer or a comment to make? And if you don't, we can definitely take this one offline and see if we can get some more information for that person. And what we'll do is we will definitely put it up on our webpage where this recording will be, as well as the link on our channels for coming back to this afterwards. So Alex, I've seen you unmiked yourself, so hopefully there's a reason there.
Yeah, very briefly, I think it would be worth going out and writing up a proper response to this as well. But having, knowing a few people who do work on ARDC applications and things like that, broadly speaking, this change will, I would imagine, lower the chance of successful funding applications for a few reasons. Having an interdisciplinary research community that's constantly talking to each other can generate the kinds of ideas and multi-skilled working environments that can facilitate successful ARDC funding applications. So that's going to be one part of it, is when you're having less of those community interactions, you have less of the kinds of dynamics that are going to result in a successful application. And the other one is that a lot of these applications are based off of having clear demonstrable abilities in digital research skills, tools, platforms, things like that. And of course, when there's no longer any free training available, it's going to become the people who will receive successful ARDC funding applications. It looks like it's just going to be the people who can afford to be trained in the digital research tools necessary to put forward a successful funding application. So you'd see a discrepancy, I would imagine, between researchers who can afford training and researchers who can't.
Yeah, okay, thank you. We've just got another comment. We had a comment there from Elle saying this is in full support, and that she'll, I guess, want to know what the next steps are. And we'll get to that towards the end of the session in terms of contact details and how people can get involved if they want to. A question here from Eric, could we speak to the community aspect of Rescom? In my experience, graduate research can be very siloed. For myself, I only got the chance to connect with Parkville campus from VCA through attending these trainings, which eventually led to great research partnerships. It would be a huge disappointment to lose future researchers. So any further comments on that from Rescom?
Yeah, well, I could go on and on about this. So I think the community of value that we provide is something that would be entirely, even if we go to a user pay model, it will entirely disappear. And I think that's worrisome, because the community value, as Alex was saying, is not only we provide a beacon of interdisciplinary research where people can communicate and generate ideas, but also generate connections in terms at a more level of simple well-being, and in which we not only provide the trainings, but we do empower students to generate connections by different ways. For instance, we have what we call the hacky hour. So every week we have 1 hour in which one of us or a few of us of the Rescoms will be there, and we encourage people to come with questions and help each other out. And we're there to provide support. So that generates connection, okay, I'm having issues. There's someone there that can help me out. There's a community out there that's willing to help, and that will just go away. We also help people. So if you think you have a tool that is, for instance, is valuable for others, even if it's across disciplines, we help you to create a space so you can just teach about that. First, we advertise that what we call meetups, and we give you the space to teach that tool and to connect with people that would be interested in learning what you're giving. So it's a way of generating connections, not only at the level of someone's teaching you something and they are being hired, but I'm a researcher and I connect with another researcher because we share the same interest, or we share basically the same tool, even if it's across disciplines. And that will just disappear, unfortunately. Is there anything else you would like to say about that, Alex?
Yeah, I just have to reiterate. I mean, I came through the community system. I was a res lead, where we give for the kind of people who help out at the trainings. I was a res lead for Omeka before I started in my position as a rescom for Omeka, and then NVivo. And I struggled through my honors thesis, through university, to actually make those connections with other researchers. And I think having the community that Rescom facilitated for me was immensely valuable. I had opportunities to speak on digital tools at ResBaz, and it was an amazing experience to go through, and not just to be able to present and feel valuable as a researcher, but also to be able to get to know other researchers who are doing these amazing things with all of these fantastic digital tools, and to hear about all of these possibilities that you never even would have thought were possible from where you were standing. And it's a testament to the strength of this group that we are such a close-knit group of workers with also such a close-knit community around us. I can't speak highly enough of the immense support that we've received with the open letter. Some of the testimonies, not to read any of them out, you can see them on our website, mean the absolute world to us. And again, just a testament to the communities that we've built over the years.
Thanks, excellent, Pablo. Look, we've got a couple of questions here, and I think I might throw this one over to Katie if I can, and maybe this is part of that employment rights kind of terminology about. Can you explain the consultation period? I mean, I wasn't aware that these changes were being made or were going to affect my candidacy to this level. Who was responsible for making this decision? I mean, are you able to comment on that at all, Katie?
Yeah, sure. Although I can't comment specifically about who made the decision, other than business services leaders who have been talking to the Rescom team. And I think that it's vitally important. One of the problems, start from the beginning, the consultation period, when the university proposes a major change, such as disestablishing a team, making people redundant, then under the enterprise agreement, which is the document that sets out the working conditions under which all university staff work, that is negotiated every sort of 3 or 4 years with the NTEU, the university has to go through a consultation process. So they are meant to give us a consultation paper that lays out the change and any information that's meant to justify or back up the change and how they're going to deal with work that's left behind. And then we have 4 weeks in which to submit our feedback to that change. And technically anyone who is going to be affected by the change is allowed to submit feedback, which is why the Rescom team put out the open letter and why you saw, nearly 1,000 people respond to it. Unfortunately, in the enterprise agreement clauses, it doesn't detail who specifically has to be notified of the change, which is why why they've been able to make this decision without ensuring that everyone in the faculties who will be affected actually understands what's going on. And again, it's one of the reasons why you need something like an open letter to actually get that information out there, because the university has not been doing enough of it. So that consultation process has closed now, which means that in the formal sense, any feedback won't be responded to, but the decision hasn't been finalised in the sense that they've made an announcement about what they're going to do with the Rescom team. And it's still coming through that there are people who will be affected by this decision who aren't aware that it's going on. So I think it's really important for everyone who's concerned about it to get in touch with their heads of school, the deans of their faculty, anyone they can think of, to say, you need to stand up for this essential service, and you need to make sure that this decision is reversed and that it's not carried through. And here are the reasons why. I think there's still a really important role to play in that kind of feedback through the faculties at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. And I think I might take this opportunity just to do a little bit of a plug for NTEU, and obviously the union that is here to support tertiary education workers. Is it membership free for enrolled students or grad students?
No, that was for a brief time last year. The casual membership was free for a brief time, but it is an awful lot cheaper than if you're a fixed term or ongoing staff, and it does provide support and a kind of backup there, but also, can I just say, because the Rescom is also just one of these kind of phase 1 of the professional services review, that, you can join for free as a postgrad student. They have a category of membership for postgrad students. So thanks. We'll put the link there in the when we put this recording up. Is that good, Tavita?
Yeah. I think there's a little chat just came through, and hopefully everyone can see that as well.
Yeah. So there's other things going on. There's a campaign now at the veterinary school. The animal hospital in Werribee is being hit hard by staffing cuts, and they're worried about the service that provides. Phase 2, there are things like the disestablishment of the Office of Environmental Programs and other interdisciplinary groups within the university. So this is just one of a much bigger restructure that's going on at the university. So there's a few things that we've got planned coming up through the NTEU. In particular, the university executive is having their so-called leadership retreat in February. They're having it in the city, and we're going to be having a COVID-safe protest outside of that executive to let them know as much as we can, physically, in real life, that we're not happy with the professional services review and the job cuts as they're going through. So even if that consultation period has closed now, there's still a really important part of standing up for staff at the university and for the services that students and staff rely on as well. So that's 16th of February, and there's a Facebook group called Stop the Cuts, UOM, and a Twitter account there too, and we'll be putting all of the details for that COVID safe protest on those accounts. So make sure you get onto Facebook or Twitter and follow them.
Great, thanks, Katie. I think just to reiterate that there's a big campaign, but not to take it away from the campaign that is to save the Rescom's training. I think they're all work hand in hand, because essentially it's the same decision is affecting all of us, and actually the knock-on effect is our grad students at UniMelb. So thank you, Katie. And yeah, NTEU obviously is that the organisation is there to support you, and GSA has always been a strong partner with NTEU as a unionised organisation. And so we, especially in this capacity, want to make sure that we're spreading the word on the good thing that NTEU, the good things that they do, but also the way that they support other organisations or departments, especially like Rescom's training. So I guess I just wanted to double check on our Q&A. I mean, I've got a couple of other questions here. Sorry, Pablo, did you want to say something?
No, so very briefly, I just want to reiterate what the amazing job that NTEU have done with us. I mean, their support has been invaluable, and they've been there through all the process in the consultation period and attending our meetings, which is terribly time consuming, and they've been providing us support because of all the experience they have. And we wouldn't have been able to create this open letter without their help. Quick advertisement. Thank you.
Thanks, Pablo. Okay, so I guess it's probably more directed at the Res. It's funny because we had this conversation before that we started the session around the name changes, and so currently Rescom's training was kind of shortened to Rescoms. I knew it as Res Plats, so for research platforms, and then we've got another one here. Is Res Baz conference still going to be run? And look, that I mean, I sort of giggle there a bit only because of the name, but on a serious note, I think Alex, what's your comments there?
Yeah, I think we did some initial planning for this. So last year maybe, but particularly in 2019, ResBaz we did a Researcher Connect with the library. So we worked in much closer partnership with the library to deliver an event that was different to ResBaz in, I think it was 2019, and then 2020 it was all entirely online, naturally. In terms of if the ResBaz as you know it is coming back, we did have some discussions at the start of the year about that, and towards the end of last year as well, whether or not we could run something like that in the future. If we're disestablished, the answer is no, it's definitely not going ahead. If we do stay around, if the campaign is successful and we keep our jobs, there's still going to be a big asterisk over that, naturally, because we're still in a lot of, there's a lot of restrictions around movement and things like that. And particularly with a lot of international students relying on our service, making sure that if we do a ResBaz, we need to make sure that we have enough protocols in place to be able to deliver online content there as well. So briefly put, maybe. If we're around, maybe. If we're not, definitely not.
Thanks, Alex. And I might just sort of stay in the Rescom's vein there, and I mean, there's a question here about, if these changes affect the future of ARC funding applications. And look, I'm not particularly au fait with that, but I wanted to see if anyone in this space could sort of talk to that question, in which we talked here about, in particular, C1 feasibility research environment, which researchers can talk about community of Uni Melbourne, how they proposed research project sits within that environment to foster the success of their project. So I don't know if anyone can comment on that at this stage.
I can. Pablo, do you have anything on this one?
Not really. I think it's what you said last time is kind of applies to this. Well, I mean, clearly there's going to be one implication is like if you need digital tools for doing your research, then you'll have to include an additional cost on your, which is going to be training for digital tools. In terms of fostering community that will encourage research, I mean, I think it would be a negative impact in general, but I don't know some specifics. I wouldn't be able to say something off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think probably the only distinct, I guess, with the feasibility one is because we work as a bridge to a lot of the university's more specialist services with high performance computing and things like that. The diminished ability to access those services and to be able to use those services is going to impact negatively on those sections there. Maybe section C1, that's going to be more impacted by the lack of a community, but you could see the knock-on effect there as well. I might also add just very briefly, I've been going over some of the testimonies that we have. We do have several testimonies who have directly attributed their successful ARDC funding to Research Computing Services Training and Community Team. Particularly, we've got one from the Australian Research Council Centre for Medical Implant Technology. So we do have that quite sustained engagement and clear direct link with a successful application outcome. So the evidence is there with our service.
Great, thank you. And I think there's just one more here that we probably close out on. Is that I guess Katie, you talked about the BIP. About it was 5 years ago that the BIP went through, and I guess a lot of students that are, I mean, currently understanding what's happening now probably didn't understand some history around the BIP, and that this is kind of a cycle that most universities go through. Having this discussion, how does this affect the view of the relationship between the university management and grad students? I don't know who can pick up that question. I guess it's an open question to anyone in the space around the not being aware of the history of BIP and now being aware of this change. I mean, essentially we should be partnering together, but I guess where does that relationship sort of go? Pablo?
So I want to point out something here, and I think that's a very relevant point, and it's we've been a bit sad about the whole consultation period, because we expect it to be a two-way communication in which we as stakeholders of the university would have something to say in the process and direct the budget as a whole and saying, like, we think this services are valuable, this service is valuable, this is important for us, and it's important for the overall research output of the university. And the point is that during the consultation, although it's supposed to be, according to what I've read, a two-way communication, it's been more of you give us some feedback and we'll see what we can do. And it is quite discouraging because I, as a stakeholder myself, and here I'm talking about myself, I'm personally very avid promoter of this service, and I think it's very valuable. And the fact that my position as a graduate researcher is not being heard, it's quite sad. It's just like, well, we are the researchers, we are the ones who are doing research, we are the ones who know what services are valuable, and you're not even consulting with us. What is valuable for us and what is valuable for our research output.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Pablo. Katie, did you want to add some comments?
No, I think, see, that process of disappointment that Pablo outlined is something that pretty much all staff at the university who've been around for a few years have gone through themselves, and particularly during BIP. There were hundreds and hundreds of submissions to the business improvement program, and there was almost no change between the initial paperwork, the initial proposal, and the final the final business improvement program as it went ahead. So I think it's becoming, unfortunately, a lot clearer that that the budget bottom line, even though it is extremely healthy when you take into account the assets of the university, even if you deal with their projected losses over the next couple of years because of the pandemic, they still had many, many years of making literally hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue each year. And during that time, that was in the good times, that was when they brought in the business improvement program. So unfortunately, I think this university cares more about hoarding assets and cash than it does in supporting researchers and students, because supporting researchers and students means properly funding the professional services in the university, whether that's the library or IT or student administration. All of those thousands of people that work in those areas do that work so that the research and teaching of the university can run smoothly and be the kind of institution that we all want it to be. But that the sort of corporatisation of university management means that the budget bottom line is the thing that they're most concerned about at the moment, which is why I think it's really important that people who care about universities as institutions that support research and teaching get on board when there are campaigns to save services or to join the union, because we're the ones that are trying to stand up for a decent higher education system through our own institution.
Great. Thanks, Katie. Well said, and thanks, Pablo, for those comments. I think I'm going to sort of try and tie it up at the moment. So I don't want to keep everyone longer than they should. Everyone's got things to do, but I don't want to take away how important this session was to have this conversation, to hear from the people that are directly involved, and also, if I can, while I wrap this up, maybe I can ask Alex or Pablo just to send some links into the chat there with getting involved in this, and I might ask Alex if he wanted to just say a few final comments to run it out, and I'll go around the room, so at least we can have some comments from everyone, and then make sure that there's a call to action there in the chat, so people want to get in touch with either GSA or NTEU or even the guys at Rescoms around this particular issue, or even just either if you want to follow GSA or get involved with NTEU. So Alex, I might throw it to you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, everyone, for coming along today and asking your questions. I guess the closing remark I would have is that this isn't going away anytime soon. This is a long-term pattern of behavior at the university. This is something that even when the decision is made on Monday, there are still countless other decisions that are going to be made which will negatively impact current and future graduate students and graduate researchers. So for our end, you can support us by getting in contact with your deans and heads of school, but we've also included links. I think I popped one in, or Tavita popped one in for the Faculty of Veterinary and Animal Sciences. They're currently ongoing. Phase 1 is just wrapping up. Phase 2 is going to be starting pretty soon once the discovery phase is over, and that's going to come with a whole other range of problems. I think from memory, Phase 2 is supposed to be the one that's going to target the faculties more directly than Phase 1 did, and that's going to have a much more significant impact on every student at the university as they experience their classes. So just because it's over for us in a couple of weeks doesn't mean it's over for the university. And I would encourage you all to get in contact with your deans and to stay up to date with what the GSA and the NTEU are going to be communicating, because this is going to be the year for us is a lot of these changes and arguing against them and putting forward our position and the positions of the thousands of graduate researchers at the university.
Great. Thanks, Alex. And Pablo, anything to add there on I mean, you're wearing both hats as a Rescom's person and also a grad researcher.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm a PhD candidate and a Rescom. So I've been on both sides, and I am on both sides. And yeah, I don't have anything to add generally. I just put it on the chat, a link, and there's a description on that link on what you can do in terms of how you can help us by communicating to your head of departments and deans. But yeah, so overall, I think personally, as a graduate researcher myself, I think this is a very valuable service, and I believe that the university is making a mistake by trying to disestablish the service and not even consulting on how we can actually generate an alternative.
Great, thanks, Pablo. Katie, anything else to close out there on an NTEU perspective?
First of all, it's been an absolute pleasure working on a campaign to save Rescom, and it's just once again sort of showing how short-sighted these kind of decisions are when it's such a valuable service. And I do really hope that we can save it. And part of me hopes that we can save it so that we can show other areas in the university who might be facing similar cuts that there is some hope to campaigning against these decisions. And I'd just like to add, if you do work at the university, even just a couple of hours a week as a tutor or whatever, then you should join the NTEU. This year, we've got our new enterprise agreement negotiations coming up, and I think there are some improvements that need to be made around the clauses that protect us around redundancies and consultation. Also to look at clauses that try to ensure that the university can't outsource this kind of essential services, but we can only seek improvements if we are a really strong union, and that means more people joining and getting involved in the NTU. Also, just a reminder to keep an eye out for the rally on the 16th of February and to get on Facebook or Twitter, Stop the Cuts UOM.
Great, thanks so much, guys. It's been great to have NTU in the room. Mia, I might just throw out to you just as a final word from our Education and Research Officer. Any final comments around today's discussion?
I just think that it's been a really important discussion to have, and obviously has an impact on a lot of people. So it's really good to see people coming today. And I guess, as we've said, keep in touch, and I'll put my email address in the chat as well.
Great, thanks, Mia. Thanks for your time. And finally, I might just jump over to Jeremy there as our president. Any final comments around this issue?
Yeah, not really. I think a lot of what has been said really resonates with me in the GSA. This huge shift towards this business ontology in the universe, that it's all about efficiencies and resources, as opposed to nurturing grad researchers through their degree. It's quite a shame, but of course, that's why things like this are so important, that we all work together to kind of stop it heading further in that direction. So yeah, thank you everyone for being a part of that.
Great, thanks, Jeremy. And so look, I've got just a final message here out from Miriam. Thanks, Miriam, for the multiple messages. I mean, there's a link here around ways that you can make sure that if you want to support this campaign, that the link there is to help this cause. And I mean, we'll be all on bated breath around some of the responses from the university from next week, but we will be putting this recording out, and further recording, it's education@gsa.unimel.edu.au for Mia, and president@gsa.unimel.edu.au for GSA. And obviously we'll make sure that we append all the contact details for NTU, and also of course the guys at Rescom's training. So on behalf of GSA, thank you so much for everyone's time today. It's been a great discussion, and all the hard work that's been going into the background around campaigning for, I guess, what is to support people in their jobs, but also the services for our grad researchers at the University of Melbourne. So please get involved. The GSA website is a great resource to connect with all our partners and what we're up to. But in saying that, enjoy the rest of the day and have a safe weekend, and see you soon, hopefully. Goodbye.